Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where it's all geek to me. Today, we're going to look at the second book in the Logos Philosophy Book Club from Logos Publishing, and it is Boethius's The Consolation of Philosophy. But before we do that, I want to remind you what we looked at the last time in Nicomachean Ethics. This beautiful hardcover book is part of the monthly subscription. Came out in December of last year. And in January, we got the book that we're going to be talking about today, The Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius. Before we get into Boethius, though, I think it's important that we look back at Aristotle because Boethius was well read and educated. He knew Aristotle's work, he knew Plato's work, he knew the Stoics' work. He was also a Roman Catholic during the Western fall of the Roman Empire. So I think it's important that we understand the context. And when you're looking at the context of these books and the authors who put them together, that's where these journals that come with each monthly book are fantastic. Looking at these essays in these books, in these journals, will help you understand what was going on with the author and around the world at the time of the writing of each of these books. But let's look back at Aristotle's the Nicomachean Ethics. And when we do that, we realize or we remember that Aristotle thought first that for something to be good, it needs to live up to its purpose. It needs to live up to its function. A good knife is a knife that cuts well. A good musician is a person that plays music well. Obviously, the function of something is important to whether or not it's good at what it's supposed to be doing. That led to the question of what's the function of man? What is the function of humanity? And Aristotle had to look at, or he decided to look at, well, what does man do that other animals or other living things don't do? He thought, okay, maybe it's survival. The function of man is to survive. But trees do that, plants do that. So that wasn't it. Well, maybe the function of living is about sensory perceptions, seeking pleasure through sensory perception. Well, animals do that too. What sets man apart from plants and trees and animals? And he realized that would be reason or rational thought. Therefore, rational thought, Aristotle concluded, must be the function of man. So let's look at the function of man. Let's look at rational thought. Well, what does it mean? What's the benefit of having rational thought? And he thought the benefit of rational thought, the benefit of that would be morality, moral virtues. So if you have rational moral virtues, you are functioning properly as a human being. Now, anytime I hear the phrase proper function or even function of man, I can't help but think of Jack London's quote, which was paraphrased in Ian Fleming's You Only Live Twice, James Bond's novel, and used in the latest James Bond film, where he finds a character of M, says it at the end of the film. I won't give any more away just because there might be people out there that haven't seen it. But the quote is something to the effect of the proper function of man is not to exist, it's to live. I will not waste my time trying to prolong it. I will use my time. And of course, the inference there is instead of just existing, which would be just sort of going through life, allowing life to happen to you, you're supposed to live, where you are choosing what you're going to do with the life that you have. And instead of prolonging life, enjoying it, just recognizing that you don't live forever, you're not eternal. This is the one shot you get. You need to make the most of it. I think that's the intention behind it. And I don't think Aristotle would think that that's too far off. To him, yeah, you're not supposed to just exist. You are to live your life. And to Aristotle, that meant you need to make a habit of or repeated actions that work towards those moral virtues. And if you remember the last video, those moral virtues are always the mean between the extremes of something. So you look at courage. You know, if you lack courage, then you are um, afraid, you're shy, you're scared, you're not going to do things, you're not going to try things. If you have too much courage, then you're reckless and you're going to have a shorter life because you're reckless and dangerous, or you might actually harm other people with your recklessness or your danger. So you're either too timid or you're too reckless. But if you find that golden mean, that average in between, then you find courage. So to him, to live, to find eudaimonia, which if you remember, he describes as human flourishing, then you have to find those golden means and you have to practice them. Through practice, you become. because we're not what we say we are. We're not what we claim to be. We are what we repeatedly do. And I think that's an important thing to remember in this day and age, where we can get online and we can pretend to be all kinds of things. We can claim to be all kinds of things. We have current politicians who just make claims. They're boldly false, but just make them enough and people believe them. And I think that's what you need to do with your virtuous actions. Do them enough and you become what you want to be. It's not enough to just claim it or pretend. You need to repeatedly do the things that will make you virtuous. So that's Aristotle. He also talked about friendship and the three different types of friendship, where you have friendships of utility, people who mutually benefit from the friendship. You have friendships of pleasure, people who enjoy being together. And then you have the friendships of virtue, where both people want the most good for the other. And that's the highest form of friendship. Now, when we consider all of those things, it's very important to know that going into the consolation of philosophy. Those are the ideas that Boethius would have had in his mind. Human flourishing is living a virtuous life, is doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons, and you will prosper. You will find flourishing. You will flourish in life. It didn't happen for Boethius, though. For a while, it did. Even though the Roman Empire fell and he was in the Roman politics, even though it fell and they fell under the Germanic command of King Theodoric. And Theodoric allowed Boethius to remain a part of the government, and he had a high-ranking status within the empire. He had fame and fortune and power and influence. He was what he thought was experiencing eudaimonia. However, he also had friendships, and one of those friendships is kind of what ended up getting him in trouble. A proconsul, a co-proconsul, along with him, had said something or did something, I don't remember which, that fell under the evil eye of King Theodoric. And Boethius stood by his friend of virtue. He wanted the best for his friend, and he stood by him in what he said. He agreed with it also, so he was showing integrity, another of the virtues. And in doing so, though, it didn't make Theodoric go easier on his friend and colleague. It made him come down on Boethius as well. So then Boethius finds himself in prison awaiting execution. And this is where he sort of stops and thinks about the Nicomachean ethics. And he's like, I lived a virtuous life. I showed integrity in this situation. And this is where it got me. That didn't make sense to Boethius. And he's sort of spiraling down these dark thoughts. And so he decides to sit down and write. And he writes The Consolation of Philosophy. And the title is very fitting because Lady Philosophy, Philosophy incarnate, appears before him in his cell, and they have a conversation, and she consoles him in this dark time. I can't help but think, being being the geek philosopher, when I picture Lady Philosophy showing up in his cell, I see the Force Ghost. I see a blue aura around her. She's sort of blue aura and blue color scheme. I think Jaga from Thundercats or Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Star Wars. That's how I see Lady Philosophy showing up to Boethius, because I think it's fitting. I think, when Luke Skywalker needed wisdom, needed help, he needed something, there was Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Force Ghost. When Lion-O didn't know what to do or needed a lesson spelled out for him, appeared Jaga. So Boethius needs consolation. He needs to stop the spiral of negativity in his mind and in his soul. And so, boom, here comes Lady Philosophy to explain it to him. And Boethius is kind of complaining. He's a little petulant. And Lady Philosophy is kind of like, hey, look, there's a wheel of fortune. It comes, it goes. Nothing, it doesn't last. And Boethius is, I did everything right. I lived by virtue. I did what I was supposed to do. What's going on here with this? And Lady Philosophy is basically saying, well, none of that stuff was yours. Why are you sad about losing something that was never yours to begin with? Be happy that you had it when you had it, because there was no guarantee that you would ever get it, right? And if happiness is, this is Lady Philosophy, if happiness is contingent on those things that are so uh, fragile, then it's not real happiness, because um, not only can you lose those things on a whim, but you're never guaranteed to get them. So happiness exists in people who never have those things that you have and now think you're not happy because you lost. So that's sort of what she tries to tell him with that. He says, okay, fine. He comes to accept that. But then he's thinking, well, why then is Theodoric still living large? He didn't show virtue. He's not showing integrity. Why is he living large? Why are evil people able to flourish when good people like me are not flourishing? I was, and now I'm not. What's going on with that? And Lady Philosophy tells him, Theodoric isn't flourishing. Yeah, he looks like it. For all intents and purposes, on the surface, it looks like it, but his soul is weak. He is weak. He is not showing integrity or virtue or justice or temperance. He doesn't have those things. He cannot, therefore, be experiencing eudaimonia. It might look like it, but you have to trust in the fact that he's not, because he isn't practicing the things required to attain that. So looks, you can't judge it by looks. And she said, and you sitting here, I am going to work you towards eudaimonia, even in your position, because it's not something that is external. It's something that's internal. It doesn't matter where you are. That's what you have to kind of come to realize. This concept, it makes me think of something I always appreciated way back as a teenager in the 1990s. My friends and I went and saw the Kevin Costner Robin Hood. I know it gets a lot of flack these days for his accent and everything else. At the time, I just thought it was amazing. Thought it was phenomenal. But there's a specific scene that makes me think about stuff like this, and it's the scene where Friar Tuck is getting robbed by by Robin Hood's merry men in Sherwood Forest, and they end up kidnapping him and bringing him in because they want a member of clergy as part of their band. They need spiritual guidance, and they need a pastor. They need someone of clergy. So they have him pull the cart in to their secret place in Sherwood Forest, and so he's been whipped and humiliated, and he's wearing the collar to pull the carriage in, and he's sweaty and everything else, and he could be angry, he could be mad, he could continue to fight, because at first he tried to fight them off, and he was overpowered. Um, but he doesn't. At this point, he realizes there's something more to this, right? This experience is, there's something here, and he looks up, he looks to the heavens, and he says, "Thank you, God, for teaching me humility." So he didn't take the situation and get nothing out of it. He realized, this is the situation I'm in. I must be in it for a reason. There's got to be something that I should be taking out of this. And he reasoned it must be humility. Now, all of this, of course, is undercurrent. It doesn't say that. This is my reading. This is my interpretation of it. But that's how I see it. And I think Lady Philosophy is asking Boethius to do something similar. Like, this is your situation. You can't change this, right? So how do you glean from it? How do you take something from it? And in a really sort of meta narrative sort of way, this book is the answer to that question. The fact that this book has survived this long, and that people are still reading it, and you can still take something from it, this is the answer to his question. This book is the good that came out of his situation. This is the reason for it. This is what was meant. The function of his experience was this creation. I think that's just phenomenal. I think it's such a cool idea. Like I said, it's a meta narrative element to this philosophy. Like, we have in our hands the answer to one of the questions that he was trying to ask Lady Philosophy. So that's our answer for the problem of evil. The evil people, they're not experiencing eudaimonia. They're not living a valuable life. They're not serving their proper function. And I think that's relevant. Agree with it, disagree with it. I have some back and forth. I can debate that with someone, but that's what it is, and it's enough for Boethius. So after the problem of evil, Boethius kind of says, okay, but did I do something to get here, or was this my fate? Was this going to be the end of my road no matter what? How do I change the way I view this if I don't know whether or not I did something to get here? And he's asking about free will versus providence. God sees everything, God knows the answer to every question that you'll ever ask. He knows the choice that you're going to make in every situation. Then do you have free will to actually make that choice? Because if not, that fundamentally alters everything that Aristotle is trying to say about virtue. If you're supposed to cultivate yourself into a virtuous person to achieve happiness, how do you do that if free will is an illusion? So he wants to know from Lady Philosophy essentially if providence exists, if God's plan is already thus, how do we have free will? And when I was talking to one of my daughters about this, I put it in common parlance like this. What Boethius is asking is basically like if you have the choice between Coke and Pepsi, right? You have Coke and you have Pepsi, and you're going to make a choice. And there is an entity that knows, and I don't mean knows like, oh, I know what you're going to say here. Like they actually know. Philosophically, epistemologically, they know that you're going to choose Dr. Pepper. Then can you choose Coke? And the answer to that is no, because it's already known that you're going to choose Dr. Pepper. So then do you ever really have a choice? And that's a difficult thing. That's something you have to wrestle with if you believe in a divine plan or providence that's just going to happen. Then how do people have free will? Well, Lady Philosophy answers it like this. She says, you're thinking about it wrong, Boethius, because from the time you have a choice presented to you until the time that you make the choice, to you, you're experiencing time in between. So there is a moment where the choice is being made, choice presented, choice made. There's a moment in between. To God, that moment doesn't exist like it does for us. He doesn't experience it chronologically like that. He's outside of time and he sees everything that's ever going to happen, all happening in the present. Lady Philosophy says that is omniscience. That is all knowing ability, seeing everything at once. So it's not that you are presented with a choice. He knows what you're going to choose, and then you choose it. Because then you don't really have the choice. However, if you being presented with the choice, you deciding, and the choice being made are all happening at the same time, then he isn't there knowing what choice you're going to make. He's just always known the choice. And the choice, everything is happening at once for him because he's outside of time looking in. Now, you may accept that, you may not. I definitely have some issues with it. And we can discuss that in the comments below. But that's what Lady Philosophy says, and that's good enough for Boethius. So many philosophers, later on, we'll talk about with David Hume, we'll get into some of that and a little bit of skepticism towards that. But that was enough for Boethius. Now, I'm going to leave it there as far as the content of the book goes, but I do want to talk about this particular edition once again because these are beautiful and these beautiful books. So we've talked about this one and we've talked about Nicomachean Ethics. So we've got these two so far with our monthly subscription to Logos Publishing Philosophy Book Club. If you're interested in receiving a book a month, a hardcover book with a journal volume to go along with it, with 4 essays on that book, a hard stock bookmark, and a glorious poster that comes with it as well. It's hung up back here. You can do so by clicking on the link below. And if you use my promo code, Jeremy, that's Jeremy, you'll get a 15% discount. It also helps me continue to make content like this. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe and start or join a conversation down below in the comments. If you'd like to join the Logos Philosophy Book Club, you can do so by clicking on the link down below. And don't forget to use promo code Jeremy, Jeremy. That gets you a 15% discount, and it helps me keep making content like this. Until next time, don't just watch, think.